Welcome back to the Backcountry PA podcast. You got myself, Cody.
And you got Ethan.
We just did a great episode. Well, the one that you're going to hear right now with Greg from Whitetail Partners. All about land management, a little bit about his season as well. But man, it was a great episode.
Yeah, I have my property set up and ready to go now.
Dude, so we pretty much, we talked about, the 80-20 rule as well. We talked about like the main food source that is a really important one that you should have on every property.
Yep.
No matter what, you should have it on your property. The top the three things you brought up, that the food source, cover, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
We broke that down. And then we dove into Ethan's property. Ethan has 20 acres. You say 25, on X is 21. So we're going to stick with on X.
Who's lying?
Ethan's lying. On X is right. So we broke down Ethan's property pretty much. And we figured out where exactly he should put things. And I think it's freaking brilliant because we just, after the episode, we were just talking to Greg about your property. And like, it's just, I mean, it makes so much sense now.
Everything makes sense now.
It just, the pieces come together. It's almost like in your mind, you kind of know it.
Mm-hmm.
But yet you also need that second person or third person to like kind of validate
to hear
your thoughts.
Especially to hear it from someone that does this professionally and has their job, to hear it from them.
Yep.
Just, go ahead and do it now.
Yeah, I mean, it makes so much sense because your encounter with that big buck, he was obviously downwind of that bedding area when he came through, or he was going right through, depending on the wind. So, like, I think you got to mark down the wind that you, or if you can go back and figure out the wind, go down to weatherunderground.com and try and figure out the wind in that area, because that'll tell you if he was going with the wind or against the wind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think he was just, because it was, November 5th?
First week in November, yep.
Yeah, so around our deer camp.
Yep.
Are you taking off that whole week yet, or don't you know yet?
Oh, yeah, I'm taking off.
You taking off the whole week?
I'm taking off Sunday to Sunday.
Sunday to Sunday. So you're going to be up there. There's going to be a buck hanging in that tree, right?
I won't even need to hunt. I'm set and I'm good to go. You guys be hunting deer. I'll be walking around shooting squirrels.
So I'm going to, Drew and I might be at least making one trip over to my camp. Because I'm the one area that I was never able to hunt, because like every time I went to hunt it, the weather was terrible. I couldn't get across the creek. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I need to hunt at least once, like at my old cabin. Like it's a hub. Like they literally can come off each point of the mountain and drop down into this hub. And like I was listening to old scouting episodes, which I'm putting together some e-scouting episodes. From the Whitetail scouting series from last year, but I'm trying to break them down, make it more digestible, not congestible. Congestible is when you're congested, dumbass.
Yeah, really, come on.
Digestible, so that you guys just hear the facts from Johnny Stewart, from Jeff Doyle. So I just edited those two down, and Jeff Doyle was talking about his rattling buck, his saddle rattle buck. Yep. And I was like, and he said this one fact that I absolutely love that I'm going to do now with rattling. And I'm not going to, I need you guys to listen to it. Like, that's the whole point of a podcast, for you guys to listen to it. But I'm going to rattle more. I'm going to grunt more, especially during that time frame. Because I have pictures of them, too, during that time frame up in that area. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for you guys to listen to this episode as well. Because a lot of freaking knowledge drop. Make sure you go follow Greg on Instagram. Greg_Whitetail _partners.
Yep.
On IG. He has a lot of information there, a lot of it. But before we get the episode, partners, make sure you go check out the description for discount codes, all that kind of stuff. XOP, Forget Genetics, Scent Thief, On X, Our Grounds Coffee Company, Campco, missing any, On X. That's it.
I think we got them all.
Yeah,
I hope so.
I think we did that. Yeah, we got him. Ethan, you have the whiteboard.
I'll say they're right there. I don't know why I forget them.
Ethan, any final words for him before they get to the episode?
Enjoy. That's about really simple. Enjoy.
Simple as that. Remember to keep hunting.
Keep fishing.
And enjoy the freaking process. Also, remember to give us a rating or review on Apple or Spotify, and like and subscribe on YouTube. Thanks. I was like, man, that looks like a nice box blind you're in.
Yeah. If I could hunt out of this thing, that would make it all the better.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we have me and my wife bought a 29-foot camper. It's a pull behind. It's not like I don't know if yours is
Gotta make sure my phone's off.
Oh, if you're is yours a drivable one or is it a
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, ours is a 35-foot Class A, so it's a big rig.
Oh shit. Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah.
Do you need a CDL for that one for a 35?
You don't.
Okay.
I think that it's like 45 or 46 for that. I know that because we towed our car out here, and I know with the motorhome and the car, I was like just under the CDL requirement by like a couple of feet. So
that is awesome. I always because with my job I do like if the decals and stuff like that, like the stuff that goes inside a truck, make sure they're correct. Help with DOT with weighing trucks and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, my first question when I like started doing that was, so if I buy a new camper, if I buy like this size camper, do I need to pull into these weigh stations all the time to like, the guy's like, no, you don't have to worry. I'm like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, no kidding.
I don't want to be weighed like
all the time.
Yeah,
the campers can get heavy. Like I try to keep it as light as possible when I'm pulling it.
Yeah. Yeah, we had quite a bit because, with living out of it, it's like a whole different thing than when you're just like going camping for the weekend. It's like you find out real quick what you need and you don't need, and you pack everything as best you can and just start going.
But it's probably nice because when you go and like, I know for me, when I go camping, when I pull the camper somewhere, it's always like, as I'm driving there, halfway there, I'm like, did I pack this? Do I have this? And you're already like an hour and a half away. I'm like, oh no. Like that's something I kind of need.
Yeah, definitely.
But with you, it's different. It's like, all right, well, you pull into another campground. It's, hey, I have that already.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Pretty much got everything right on hand, and limit my stuff. That's for sure. I don't have too much laying around that I don't use. I can say that for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That'd be nice because my wife is a nurse as well.
Okay.
She thought about doing that travel nursing for before. I would say probably a year into us being together, she thought about it, but just never pursued it. But, now that we have a daughter, we can't really do that now. But it looks appealing. Like, if you really have a family and stuff like that, like if it was a couple going and doing it together, like it'd be pretty cool, especially in your line of work as well.
Yeah, it works out really good. And like she traveled around the Ohio area for like the first 9 months. And then as we entered into summer here and I started slowing down with my work, it was just like, let's kind of just pick a spot on the map. And we came out here and it's been awesome. It is like a once in a lifetime experience. I will say that, driving that motorhome through Montana, like the Bozeman area and stuff, there's just like elk grazing down by the rivers and there's snow-capped mountains. And I'm just like, man, if this isn't the American dream, I don't really know what it is,
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. I mean, the American dreams where you don't have, do you have a house that you like?
So we have an apartment back in Ohio. So with her traveling, in order for her to get her tax-free stipends, we have to have a tax home. So right now we have an apartment until July, and then we move out of that. But we actually just bought a property down in southern Ohio, so that way now that'll be taken care of once our lease is up there.
That's nice. That is.
Yeah.
That's you're living the I would say the outdoorsman's American dream.
I'm trying, man. It's been a long time coming, that's for sure. I've had a long journey to get to where I am, but I feel like I'm finally just getting to pull the trigger on all the really fun stuff.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to hear about it because I mean, it's just an exciting atmosphere because I mean we've been doing this for 5+ years now. I think it's only 5. I don't think it's 6 yet.
No, not till fall.
Yeah, not till September.
Awesome. Yeah.
Of 2024. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It's just kind of all just keep going at this point.
Yeah, really. But like, it's so cool because now that we're kind of in the industry, it's cool to see and meet all these different people that do different jobs. Yeah. Like before we even started the podcast, we had no idea there was people that did like property management or like did the thing that we do now. What is it? Like not a guide, but like helps someone get on like whitetails or something like that. Like
Yep.
not doesn't guide them there, but assists them in their pursuing of whitetail, like a whitetail buck. So
Yep.
that's like that's pretty cool to find those kind of stuff out. Like just bow techs, just everything in general. It just seems like this industry is like blowing up, and it's pretty cool to see.
There's so much.
Yeah.
So much money.
Yeah, it's really cool to be on it on the inside. It is. I did my first trade shows this winter, and that was awesome. Like just getting to rub elbows with people that I've looked up to in the industry for years and years, and it's like you always see them online and stuff, and it's like you're setting up a booth right next to them, and it's like, holy shit, this is pretty crazy.
Yeah, man. So before we get into the nit and gritty of it, how about you introduce yourself to the listeners, who you are, what you do, and maybe a little background about how you got into hunting in general.
Yeah. So my name's Greg Kazmierski. I live down in southern Ohio, just about a half an hour, 45 minutes southeast of Columbus right now. And I actually grew up in the middle of the lower peninsula of Michigan, and I had a very traditional hunting background to like what you hear a lot of guys telling their stories, where I had my dad hunted, my grandpa hunted, we had our family deer camp. We'd always go up there, and I was going up there long before I could hunt. And one of the really cool things that really got me hooked on the outdoors and the woods in general, my dad and his cousin, they actually would give me a map and a compass, and they would pick out points on the map and have me walk to them and like lead them to that. And so I was reading topo maps from like a very young age, and it was just something like it got my mind working outdoors, and I just like really fell in love with just being out there and just getting to walk around the woods and just kind of getting lost and enjoying it. And then from there, I always liked to hunt, but it was very traditional again, where like we had our spots. You'd go to the same spot every year and you'd hunt this spot because this is where dad said to hunt. And then, being young, I was like, man, I wonder what's out there from doing all those activities. And, then when I turned 16, I remember I had a Chevy S10. I got a bow for my birthday in the middle of the summer. It was like an old Martin bow or something like that. And I just downloaded a bunch of DNR maps offline because it was before Onyx on the phone and everything like that. And I found out there's a piece of public land like not too far away from my house. So I was just like, I'm just going to go check this out and see what's on. And there's just deer runs and things everywhere, and I just started hunting, and I was making mistake every single day, but it was just like I was learning, and it was just right back into that same cycle of how fun it was just learning how to read maps and stuff. And I was just like, man, this is so much fun, and just really has been a growing passion from there. My first job was in the whitetail industry. I helped a small outdoor company where I grew up there in Michigan. I did just like a lot of packaging and marketing stuff for them when I was young. And then I would also do actual land management work on the guy. He owned 200 acres. So I did a lot of work for him, like planting his food plots and helping him with blinds and tree stands and things like that. So really kind of rolled through that, and then stepped away from really going all in on it while I was in college. I played college ball in Michigan there, so I just didn't really have a lot of time because the college ball was a year-round thing, and I was really pushing hard at that. So stepped away from a few years and started a different career path right out of college in the finance world, and kind of did that for a while. Then COVID happened, and I realized that I was not doing what I wanted to do my whole life, and came home one day, and my girlfriend at the time, wife now, I told her that, I want to go somewhere and find a way to get back into the industry. And I had been traveling down to hunt Ohio public land for a few years. And I was like, what if we just like moved to Ohio? And I just started doing land management stuff. And it took a long time, but I eventually brought her down on a scouting trip with me, and we drove through the Columbus area, and she was like, you know what, I actually like it down here. Maybe I'll look at jobs at the hospitals. And I was like, say no more. And then over the next 3 weeks, we sold our house, got married, and moved to Ohio, six hours away from where we all grew up. So it was quite the adventure, and fell into an opportunity to get on the Whitetail Partners team, where I am now doing the consulting and land management work. And it's just been a nonstop blessing ever since then.
Yeah, that's wow. It seems like everyone who wants to get into the the industry of hunting moves to Ohio, because Derek from Latitude did the same thing. He went from PA to Ohio, and now he's with Latitude in Michigan. So I mean, he doesn't.
So cool.
Yeah, but it's so I need to go back. So you had an S10, right? Mm-hmm. Was it 4-wheel drive? Because no, a lot of the S10s weren't 4-wheel drive, and
it was not, man. It was not. I had to throw the sandbags in the back and cross my fingers and pray when I was going down the 2-trackers.
Because I know Michigan mountains, I've heard a lot about them, are like the big woods of Michigan. It's rough terrain, and I can imagine a little S10, like it really probably was it automatic or manual?
It was automatic.
Okay, all right.
It was a little 4-cylinder. It didn't have a whole lot to it, but man, it was fun. It was a good time. I always look back on that, and just like anytime I get too caught up in the process of going after a certain deer or anything like that, I always think back to those days. Like, man, at one time you had a print off map, a S10 and a Martin bow, and you're just going out there getting after it.
Man, you think of all the memories you make now. Just think of the memories you made back then with that little S10. You didn't know if you actually get to the spot you wanted to get to or not. Like
that was half the adventure.
Yep. Oh my! I had a 99 Dodge Dakota with an 8-foot bed. It was 2-wheel drive. Going up to the cabin, I made sure everything was in the back. It was nice and heavy, and I was like, okay, we can do. I'm putzing. I just putzed up the mountain if it rained. I was like, oh, this is not going to be fun. I made it, but it was a struggle every time.
Oh yeah.
So you do whitetail management on properties, all that kind of stuff. You make people's properties pretty much better, is what I hear from this. So I have some questions that I think are like kind of like controversial, that there's a big debates about them, right?
Yeah.
So here in PA, we can't bait up until like 30 days before the season.
Everything has to be up.
It has to be up. And even like you can't hunt that area unless you take the dirt out of the area, right? Mm-hmm. So there's people saying that food plots are basically a giant supplemental feed area for like minerals. It's like putting minerals down. Now, I know, Ethan, because you have private property, I have no private property to do it on. Greg, you help people with property. Mm-hmm. What's your guys' opinion on the people saying that food plots are just giant supplemental feed areas where it's pretty much like putting a mineral site out? It's like baiting in deer pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like one of those things where if somebody that would be saying like stuff like that, like it's the grass is always greener on the other side, right?
The clover is always greener on the other side.
Yeah, right. Yep. That's a better term for it. And granted, like those plots are gonna come and pull those deer in, but it's not that it's like more work or anything to just throw out a bait pile. Although the whole planting process, there's a lot that goes into that. But to me, it's just a lot different, because like I don't look at a food plot as just a standalone, like I'm going to plant this food plot, I'm going to hunt over this food plot, and that's where I'm going to tag my target buck. That's just all part of the bigger picture of whatever I'm trying to do on that property. So it's just one piece of the puzzle, and there's a lot more nutritional content to planting a food plot compared to just rolling through corn after corn through the entire hunting season. So I think from like the perspective of what's better for the deer, like you're providing them with an actual higher quality food source. So having that there far outweighs any kind of debate on should it or should it not be allowed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm right there. I can see. Like, I like to see kind of both sides of it. Like, I can see where the one guy's coming from, especially if he doesn't have private property and he sees these people with private property, like having these beautiful food plots and beautiful, like kill plots, kind of like Ethan has. Like,
I have kill plots. I don't have. I'm in the woods, so I don't have several acres of food plot land. I have a little tiny. I got a patch here, a patch there. Yep. So I call them kill plots. Yeah. Anything under half an acre.
I would say under an acre.
Under an acre. Anything under an acre, I just call it a kill plot at that point. Yeah. Over that, it can be a food plot.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on it, Ethan?
Well, if it was baiting and everything, I would have had a deer, and my dad both would have had a deer right over my kill plot for the last couple of years I've had it, but it's not. It's something for the deer. I mean, they're grazers. They go, I mean, they just munch on as they're walking through. So to have something else there for them that is nutritional, you know, it's not, like you said, it's just not a pile of corn. It's not really doing much for them. But to have the clover, the chicory, the rape, whatever else you can plant, to have that there for them, it's something that's going to help them on a health nutritional side. And they know, deer know what they need. Like they're not stupid. We say that more time because they outsmart us all the time during hunting season. But
10 times out of 10.
10 times out of 10. But they know what their body needs every time. So if you're planting something that's going to help them, especially, like, I love watching, more than I like seeing the big buck coming through, I love watching the doe, especially the ones that I know are pregnant, the ones that I know had babies, and the fawns coming through eating. Because I was like, okay, I am increasing the chance of their survival come winter, because we know North Pennsylvania can get pretty harsh winters. So I look at it as I'm helping. And it's not an advantage. I wouldn't call it an advantage, because they some of them, they couldn't give two shits. They could go a mile away and find something better that they want to eat on public land, and they don't feel like eating my clover. Come October, and that's on them.
No, I mean, I think minerals have a place. They do offer some benefits. Certain minerals do offer some benefits to the deer herd, like for the fawns, for the milk producing of a doe. It helps with that stuff. But I mean, I think that food plots, are good, because I mean the Game Commission does them. The Game Commission, DCNR, they put them out there on. I know Ohio has like those big giant cornfields that you have too out there in the mountains. Now, the one thing, I don't know what Ohio's regulations are, but I think in PA, if you're hunting private land and there's a cut cornfield, you can't hunt that field for 30 days if it's just cut, because the corn laying in the field. I looked that up because I was hunting a field edge one time. I was like, there's corn in this field. Like, wouldn't that be considered like baiting? Like, if I shoot a deer here, would that be considered baiting? But I guess it's like, if it's on private, it's cut. If it's freshly cut, you can't hunt it that day. Like, you can't hunt right on it. You have to be like a certain amount of yardage away from that field, I believe. Not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what I read, that you have to be like a certain amount. I don't know what Ohio's like for that, or.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything like that for here in Ohio, but I do also know, like, on private property, you can put bait out year round down here, and not any kind of limit. So that's a very common thing. And like, that's a common objection I deal with when I'm working with landowners in Ohio, is my neighbor has 10 different 50-pound feeders out. How am I supposed to compete with that? So that's a common problem that we try to solve, just because the baiting culture in the state of Ohio, it's something that people use because they've had success with it, and they have success with it year over year. So, I can't knock somebody down, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They're going out there to tag a deer, and they're tagging a deer every year. Well, that's why you're out there. So
that's the main objective of hunting, right? To kill it. I mean, yes, the story and that's another thing I want to get to, is like, everyone wants that experience. I love the experience of hunting public, like going deep, exploring new areas, all that kind of stuff. Mobile setups, setting up in new areas, seeing new things. Especially when you have like a 500-pound bear on your camera that you don't really want to push through where you want to go anymore. But like, with everyone wanting to have like this crazy encounter or like this crazy story on public now and have that success on public, do you see more of like a decline in like your line of work because of people want those experiences over like maybe having their own property?
Not necessarily. I think really for the majority of it, it's really two different crowds. I've kind of found myself in the middle of it, because I've done a lot of public land hunting, and really have spent the majority of my private property time helping other landowners and being more involved in the process rather than the hunts. But really, it's two different crowds, and it's not necessarily that the guys that own that private property, that they're lacking that seeking of adventure, because they still have that same rush that guys like myself or you guys or whoever's hunting public land get when they're out there doing those things. It's just that they value the work that goes into developing these properties and turning them into something special, because I can say that it's equally as rewarding as going and setting up somewhere on public land and having a successful hunt as going out there and cutting bedding areas all spring and then hunting the downwind side of those bedding areas the last week of October and tagging your target buck on it.
Yeah.
It's two different kinds of work, whether I'm out there scouting all winter or if I'm running a chainsaw all winter. It's like, it's still work. It's just a different type of reward from the work you're putting in.
Yeah. I mean, we've said that before. It's like, there's two different ways. There's multiple different ways to skin a buck, right? It's like you can either there's multiple ways to do that work. So like you can either scout your ass off, you can put a lot of time on your property and be like I asked you that, like what would be more rewarding for you is like killing on your property over a plot that you put in yourself, or going 5 miles deep, killing a buck back there, or like a deer in general back there. And you even said like it would be more beneficial to do it over a food plot that you put a work in, like, and but both are beneficial. Both are rewarding in their own aspect.
Right. Yeah. It just all depends on, what you value, when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I even I got pictures today of doe walking through the food plot. I like seeing the deer walking through, but it's not, I'm just extra happy when I see the deer in a picture with their head down, actually grazing on the food plot that I took time to plant and clear out and rake and talk about blood, sweat, and tears. And I'm just over here, I'm like, this motherfuckers hate this thing. These
Deep bled?
Oh, I mean, probably cut my hands at some point. There's old tools up there. Probably got a few splinters in my hands at some point. But those roots, you get a metal rake and you get caught in one of those roots up there and that thing slides. Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah. Go with the grain.
Yeah, well, it's kind of hard to do because the roots are going and all the grain is everywhere. I have it's a headache. Let me tell you what, but it's worth it because just like I said, to see them on camera grazing, even in part, like I've seen them in person doing it too. It's like I did that.
Yeah, and
they like it. This is awesome. Now they got to stay there during hunting season. And it'll be even better.
Do you, Greg? When you first started, like that first person you helped? Let's go back to the very first person. What did you feel when you were helping that person, when you were putting that plot in, when you were helping them with their land, maybe even like when they were successful? Like, what was that feeling like? Or like what was that feeling like? Like, how excited did you get for that?
Yeah, honestly, man, it's like that feeling I got on day one. I literally still get it today. It's just I'd say it's over 90% of the time that I get this feeling when I'm out on a property where I just have like a moment of pause and realization, like I actually can't believe that this is my job. Like being able to not only be out in the field and just be involved with whitetail year round and just whether it's improving my own hunting or other people's, and then getting those buck down texts from the guys that I'm helping in the fall, like, because that's the slowest time of year for me working wise. But there's nothing that beats being out on your own rut trip and then getting a text from a guy with his buck picture down, and he's so ecstatic, and he talks about literally like, hey, we designed the property and I hunted in stand, like we'll name the stand sometimes, like I hunted here and he did exactly what we thought he would do. And it's just like, it's such a fulfilling experience to be able to be a part, because I just know from like my own personal experience, those are core memories that stay with you forever. And those are like the things I think about when I'm putting a design together or putting the actual plan into action, is like, I have that direct hand in being a core memory for somebody, and just being able to do that time and time again with all these different guys is just like, it's the most special thing about it.
Yeah. That feeling would be awesome. Like to just
it is.
Get someone on, like getting someone on a deer is just an exciting thing in general. Like my buddy Matt, like taking him out, like when I think the first time it was after I got my one buck down in archery season, and then I went out with him because I was tagged out. I was like, I have no reason to go out like opening day of rifle. So we went to the one spot, and like I was on this like hunting public kick where like I was like grunting in or rattling and doing all that kind of stuff, like making it sound really realistic. Actually, it was that buck right there. It was that one because I grunted him in.
Yep.
So it was like the next weekend, like after bear and PA was rifle, and Matt and I went out, and like I did some grunts, like snort, wheeze, and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, I think they're still gonna be like rutted up, ready to go. And this like we hear this like snort behind us, and this like little 4-point comes running out and just like stands there, and I was like, oh my gosh, that would have been so amazing to get Matt his first buck right there, first deer in general right there. It's like that was exciting, but really it was a little 4-point. I was like, can you see another point on him? I don't.
You try to put that third point on the side so bad.
Oh yeah,
you're like I need it.
Yeah, especially for his first one, it's like it doesn't even matter. Like it just has to have 3 on one side. I don't care what it is, just shoot it. But yeah, that would be an exciting one. And also another one like. Is there any juniors that you got like on their property? They got their first deer ever on the property?
Oh yeah, that's the other beautiful thing about it is the spectrum of hunters that I get to work with is all the way from one to the other of people that just it's all family oriented. Like there's new people coming in and hunting every single year, and it's all about just getting the kids involved and like going out there and getting them their first deer. And then there's these guys, especially just like in Ohio, particularly Southern Ohio, there's a different kind of deer hunting that gets done, and it's trophy style deer hunting.
Okay.
And like those setups are a lot different than just people that are just going out there trying to see deer and just have that good family experience. And then these guys that are trying to tune their property in, so they're shooting the biggest buck on the block year after year. So getting to help each end of that is even better. And from my end, whether it's the first deer or the biggest deer, it all feels the same, because that's what I'm trying to do is figure out what goals do you as the landowner have, and let's find our best solution to achieve those goals. And that's what we're doing with the actual plan. So it's always rewarding no matter what that trophy is to whoever the landowner is.
Man, but there's like two different like that's completely different like aspects of things, right? Like someone who wants to be that trophy hunter, and someone who just wants to like have a good deer herd where they can go out there and just they're guaranteed to see a lot of deer. So like what's like the biggest difference between the two? Like the trophy hunter that wants that like Pope and Young, Boone and Crockett type buck, and then the one that wants just to see a bunch of deer.
Now, when you say the difference, are you looking at like what's the difference in how we're kind of setting up a property? Yeah,
different setup and types of property. Like, is it like I imagine there's different types of food plots you put in, or different like bedding areas you cut, like all that. Like, I'm not familiar with that stuff. So, like, what kind of stuff would be different on each property that would really stand out to someone? Yeah.
So, really, to be honest, the core elements of a plan are going to be very similar, and somewhere where a majority of the properties that I work are, like in the hill country of Ohio here. There's only so many places in the hills that you can plant a food plot. There's only so many flat areas that you can put in a bedding area. So when you're limited by the terrain, what the terrain has to offer you, you kind of have to do what you have to do with your habitat improvements. But where it really shifts is how that person is going to be hunting the property. If somebody just simply wants to go out and fill a few tags a year and they could really care less if it's a buck, if it's a doe, how big the buck is, you can focus a lot of your hunting over food sources. You can focus a lot of your hunting really close to those food sources and in these easy in and out access type of places, where if you're wanting to shoot the biggest buck on your property, you have to be so much more diligent on your approach to how you hunt it. So each property may have all of the same setups, but how you hunt them, how often you hunt them, you just have to be wired so different if you want to go after those big bucks consistently, which I'm sure with all the great guys you guys have had on the podcast, that by now. It's like those guys that are going out there and taking those big bucks year after year, they're wired differently. Like their approach, their year-round process, like that's all different than somebody that's just going out there to hunt. And so you can really take like all of those traits and characteristics and like put that into the private land aspect of being just very dedicated and disciplined to the approach of how you're going to hunt that property, and only hunting when things are lining up for like the right day to hunt.
That makes, yeah. So like right winds, the thermals, all that kind of stuff. So especially in hill country, the thermals are big, because like that's one thing that I've had the biggest issue with thermals, is trying to figure that out. Like I think I have a gist of it, but it's like it's still. But that'll be another, because we're scheduling another one for you with e-scouting and all that kind of stuff. So we're sticking to property management here. We're not going to go off the rabbit hole too much right now.
Yeah, I could take you guys down a rabbit hole and we'd be on here for 3 days.
And I personally would love that.
We would just we could break it down. I'm not going to lie. I really look forward to this episode. As soon as he said we're doing land management episode, and I was like, dude, yes.
Ethan, fishing, land management.
I'm all about
small game. That's his jam.
Yep.
Squirrels, fish, and food plots.
There you go.
And I'm a happy camper.
Make that a shirt.
Yes. How long of a process would it take? Because I can't imagine, like, okay, we'll start with the property in late winter, early spring, and come fall, you're going to be ready, set, and you're going to have all these buck and deer. Like, I know I struggle with that sometimes, where like I'll start doing things and I want it to be ready, because I put up some trees and I'm just like watching them like every like 2 weeks or whatever. I go
measuring them.
Yeah, I'm like, did you grow? Did you get any bigger yet? Like, what's going on? Like, how long, and is it how long of a process to like get it to where even like the customer wants it to? And is it hard to kind of get that into people's heads that like this isn't going to happen in 6 months? This might take a few years to be where you want it to be.
Yeah, so how long it takes is really going to vary from one property to the next. You know, what's the extent of the plan that we're putting into place? But I say a good general rule of thumb to follow is that it never ends. There's always something that can be done. No matter what you do with your food plot, where you put your bedding areas. New trees fall in the forest every day, which alters deer movement. Deer react to the changes that you make on the landscape, and you might cut the best bedding area in the world. I've done this before. I feel like I've went in and cut a beautiful bedding area, and then we show up the next spring and the deer didn't use it, and you're left scratching your head, why the heck are they not using this? So it never really ends as far as that process goes. But I do also think that you can see those results in the first year. So I do a lot of the design work in the December to like March range, and then come back out and actually work with the chainsaw and do things with the landowners on the farms from about March until the beginning of June, once summer's kind of like too thick and hot and heavy. And I make it very clear when we're in that first initial like design phase that, hey, you know, like this is not an overnight thing, but once we have this plan in place, I'm going to give you all of the tools that you need, so that way year one you can start to see results from your property. So when I give somebody a habitat plan, what comes in that drawing, that might not look like that in person for 3 to 5 years, maybe even longer. But I'm going to deliver a priority list of here's projects you can get started 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and whatever number one is going to have the biggest impact on you having greater success on your property to meet the goals that you're looking for. So I do believe that finishing your hunting season, doing your projects throughout the spring until spring green up hits, and then letting nature play its course and doing a final touch up before season, you can definitely have results in that first year. It's just the matter of what do you want it to look like in the long term, and how committed are you to, say, turning this 4 out of 10 property to a 6 out of 10 to eventually a 10 out of 10. You know, I don't think you can go from a 4 to a 10 in a year, but you definitely can go from a 4 to 6, 7, and that's better, and that's improvement. And I think that's what you really got to get caught up on more, is how can I just make this a little bit better each and every year?
Yeah. I constantly see myself like coming up with new plans, new ideas, like, oh, I could do this. And like I try to do at least something every year to get it done. But then I got my mom, my wife constantly are like, I love these plans. They're great. But relax. You're throwing a lot on your plate, and it is a lot of work. Like maybe some people don't realize it. They think like, oh, you just threw down some seed and now you got a food plot and everything. Like, it's a lot of work to make a property the way A, you want it to, and B, that the wildlife actually wants. Because you can throw food down, you can do whatever you want, but if you don't have it in the right place, you don't have it, where they usually, like, it could just be a waste of time, a waste of money, and I'm figuring that out, like, okay, they like it here, so what can I put here that they like? And I don't know, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And I never feel, and I'm sure you might not even feel this way, like, it never feels like a job, or never actually feel like it's work.
Oh yeah.
But every time I go up to the cabin, I never feel like, oh my God, I have to go do this. I have to go cut trees. I have to go plant. Like, I never feel like, I'm like, I like this. So I can imagine you probably feel pretty similar. Like, it doesn't feel like work to you.
Yeah. 100%. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's almost like when we always take vacations for hunting season, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're going on vacation," and really, we're telling them, like, it's not a vacation. Like, we're putting in a lot of work to go out there. Like, but yet at the same moment, in the same aspect of what you're saying about making your own food plots and make land, improvements, all that kind of stuff, it doesn't feel like work when you're doing it. I mean, it may feel like work when you lay down at the end of the day and you're like, oh, my God, I'm so sore. That kind of work. But yet also it doesn't. It's very rewarding in every aspect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, is it like majority just exclusive whitetail property management? Like, that's the only thing? Because I know a lot of people are like, well, yeah, I want to do this for the deer. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, well, there's turkey, there's bear, there's grouse, there's
I mean, even like what you just posted today, like the wildflowers for
the pollinators.
Native
like I have a bunch of, I bought some wildflowers and some grasses for the thing. I was like, the grouse like it, the turkey like it, obviously the pollinators,
butterflies.
The butterfly,
I like to see butterflies.
Do it for the bees, man. Do it for the bees.
Just buzzing.
Yeah. So, like, do you ever take that into consideration, or is it? I mean, the most of the people you talk to are just whitetail 100% of the time.
Yeah. So it's a healthy mix. Myself personally, what I place my focus on whitetail, but if somebody is a whitetail hunter and a turkey hunter, that's what's beautiful about this is the habitat improvements that you do, things like you said about like planting the pollinator mix, or if you do go in there and you open up some canopy and create some understory cover, like those types of projects, that's going to be better for all of the species that are living on your property, not just the whitetail. They all live in that same ecosystem, and the projects that you're doing are just making it better for all of them. And so it's a collateral effect. So it's not necessarily like we're setting it up for everything, but everything benefits from the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
I think that was one of my concerns, like getting in, like, oh, I want to get more deer in the property, but then in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'm doing this to help the deer, and then it's transitioned over time where I want to do it for all of the animals because we have a wide range of wildlife up at the cabin, so I want to do it for everything. It's like, but in the back of my mind, minus in the beginning, the elk, minus the elk, I don't want the elk coming through because they'll just destroy everything. They're cool to see down in the valley, not on my mountain. But like in the back of my mind, it was always like, okay, am I going to hurt anything in the process? Like, am I not going to see turkey for whatever dumb reason because I'm trying to do this for this animal, or I'm not going to see this? Like, it's just, there's a lot of factors that go into it. But then, like you said, if you're doing it for the deer, it does have a ripple effect of helping other wildlife as well, which is good to know. That helps.
Yeah, I mean, even on your property, you've seen bobcats already. You've seen turkey walk through.
I've literally seen everything minus fishers.
Yep. Yeah. Which, I mean, they're kind of more of a wet area type.
Yeah, they can
creature.
Stay away. We have enough of everything else.
Yeah. So let's. What's the smallest property you've worked on, and what's the largest property that you've worked on?
Yeah, so smallest property I've worked on was just over 10 acres.
Okay.
And then the largest continuous property I've worked on is 550 acres. But I also have a couple landowners that own in the couple of thousands range. It's not a continuous chunk of a couple thousand. It's like a few hundred here, a few hundred down the road, and it's all split up. But largest continuous chunk is 550.
Wow. So what's the hardest one to kind of, I guess, break down and work on? Because I imagine that 10-acre one can be hard just because of the size of it, like how small it is. It's like, and it depends if it has a house on it too. Like it's like, okay, if that house is there, I really have maybe 8 acres to work on then, or 6 or whatever. And then that 550, it's like, okay, there's this little tiny house with tiny property, and then I have 545 acres of land to work with. It's like, where do I even start with that?
Yeah. So each one comes with their own challenges. With like that 10-acre piece, it did have a house on the front of it, and how it worked out, I think it was it would have been right around that, like 8 or 9 acres out of the 10 we were actually able to use to develop somewhat of a plan for. And really what we had to do right from the beginning, we just had to make it very clear, like, here are the very few strengths that you have to hunt this property. It had very good access, and it could only really be hunted on a west or a southwest wind. So anything besides a west or a southwest, I told the guys, they're both public land hunters, go hunt public land. Don't even waste your time. It's just not worth it. And then we just had to be very diligent about how we got in there and hunted it. And it worked. They had success on it in their first year. They were able to pull a buck off of it. So, the challenge there is, one, can we find out what that strength of the property is, and is the landowner going to buy into it, so that way they can have success? They did. It worked, and everything was great. Now on this 550 acre piece, it's like, how do you break down 550 acres and turn it into habitat? Because, like Ethan, I'm sure as you found out, managing 20 acres, you can feel like that's going to take up your whole summer. So how can you possibly think to develop 550 into a manageable habitat? Well, you just have to really pick and choose those priority areas, like, where do I need to start, and how can I kind of like trickle down that focus? And that's really the best way. How that worked out so beautifully is that all of the food was on the exterior part of the property, and we were able to dedicate just around 110 acres in the center part of the property where they don't ever have to go into it during the hunting season. So it's like that right there. And, you think about how special that is. That's amount of property that a lot of people don't even have the opportunity to hunt in general. And they get to dedicate that to what I'm calling a great big buck sanctuary, because as you walk through it, it was just loaded with buck sign. And it's just, that's right where it needs to be. And that doesn't need as much development as the outer parts of where we're going to be hunting, because clearly those bucks still like to work in that center of the property even without habitat. It's just figuring out how can we get them to position in all of these parts of the property and give opportunities throughout all the phases of the season on all the different winds, all the different setups, everything like that. So, the challenge is always figuring out how we can create that predictable movement. It's just that some properties are going to have more opportunities to do that than the others.
Wow. Yeah. That having that property in the middle that they don't touch, they did nothing with it. Like, they don't go in there. Maybe, in shed season, would they go in there? Like, if bucks like to be in there, they could go in there shed season?
Yep, they'll go in there. That's just like, and even if they go, they may go in there and hunt still. It's just that based off what I told them, it's, hey, my recommendation is leave this alone and turn this into a sanctuary and just let them have it, because that much property, like, you can have multiple mature bucks living in that much space, and just kind of like using different parts of the property as their core. And in a very low pressure environment, they're going to spend 99% of their time in that property because they have all the food, they have all the does, they have all the cover, and it's like, why would these bucks want to go anywhere else? There's just there's not really a reason to.
Yeah.
There's not.
I got
There's
everything
not.
I need right here.
Even if there's
Yeah.
if there's water, was there water there too for them to?
Yep, yeah, this was in
my
Ohio
gosh.
farm country, so it had just literally everything that they needed within an earshot away from where this little core area was.
Wow.
I never thought of, like, I saw that, I don't know, it was on Instagram, it was a video. I don't remember they were talking about having a deer sanctuary on your property. Like, this is an area where you never hunt. The deer can feel safe, they do what they want, and then you hunt around it or different areas. And I never thought about it before because you're thinking like, oh, I want to do the property so that I can hunt anywhere. So I was like trying to think, where could I put a quote unquote sanctuary? And I was like, okay, 20 acres to deal with. Not really sanctuary spots because the deer do already go everywhere. So I was like, I don't know, maybe a bedding spot where I don't hunt in the bedding. I leave them alone. And they kind of have certain spots that I know that I've seen them bed down. So I was like, well, maybe that could be a quote unquote sanctuary, for that. But then it's like, how do I improve it? Like, when you said we were having Greg on the wheels, they started turning. And I know that's probably not good for my wallet or or my wife's mental health because I'll be constantly doing things that I want. Like, I got to go to the cabin now. I need to take like a week or two off in the spring and just go up and work, just because, just for fun.
Yep.
Yeah, and to kind of just like build on that idea of having a sanctuary on a 20-acre piece, like, can you develop an area that the deer are going to feel as comfortable as they would in 100 acres that you're designating to a sanctuary? No, you're not going to be able to do that just because of the size perspective. If 100 acres out of 500, that's 20%. So you're talking about 5 full acres. It'd be hard to not ever disturb that on your 20-acre piece, right? But what you can do, and what I use an 80-20 rule on any property I go on, where I want to dedicate at a very minimum 80% of the property to deer habitat, and I want to use 20% or less for hunter access and stand locations. So if I can keep it under that 20%, I know that I'm giving what I call just giving the deer a majority of the property, where I'm just not really going in there during this hunting season, and I'm just focusing my access points around that. So that way I'm not using more than my 20% limit.
That's a good way to look at it because I've only hunted really one spot on the property. I mean, like, we'll walk through the property, but like sitting and consistently hunting, I don't really go too many places. It's either here, there, or going out to public land.
And if you play the right wind, when you hunt that certain area, you could be beneficial as well, especially if you have the beddings right there or whatever. Like, I mean, my thought. So he has a switchback up at his camp that he drives. He has to drive up there to his camp. You said you saw a nice buck and a doe bedded down right there.
And I always see deer laying down in there. The little beans on the side of the mountain, they love laying in there.
And if that they're already bedding there without without good cover, really, because it's just mature trees were there.
Yeah, you can see them when you're walking down the road.
Would that be one of those spots that you can make a bedding area even though you drive through there?
So that section there is on your property?
Yes.
Okay. So it can be, whenever I'm developing a place into a bedding area, I'm trying to do it away from wherever I'm accessing the property. If that's just like your drive in to get to the cabin, and then when you're hunting the property, you're just leaving from the cabin, that could look different. But I don't ever want to put a bedding area close by to where I'm using in and out access consistently to hunt, because I know that the bedding is going to be a place that the deer are going to spend a lot of their time, just like the food source. So if I can find a way to position food and bedding and then look for opportunities to hunt in between those two or on the downwind side of either of those, that's where I'm going to see a better opportunity at, say, a buck, is because that buck doesn't necessarily care as much about going into that food plot or going into that bedding area. But if he can walk a straight line and be on the downwind side of two doe social areas, then he knows that he's able to scent check all of the different doe groups there all in one shot. And then it's just all about you kind of finding those opportunities behind that. So he thinks he's safe, but in reality, you're just kind of waiting around the last corner.
Yeah.
I think because that road, I mean, Ethan, you can speak better to it, but like that road is only, when you go to hunt, he just leaves his cabin. So like so that road is really like what you said, it's only like an access to the cabin. So it's like the deer would be kind of used to that road being used as a drivable route up to the cabin.
Yeah, and they've seen us. I mean, we've seen them laying there. They just watch the car go by, so they're not really worried about it. It's just when you're walking down, that's when they're looking at you like, oh shit, I gotta get out of here. But it's like if I can get more cover in there,
that sounds like
I think I found my potential bedding spot.
It sounds like you definitely have that opportunity, because that's one of the things that I always do, like when I'm out on that initial scout with the landowner, is I'm trying to look and identify what are the natural bedding areas looking like, what are the characteristics of where these deer want to bed naturally, and that's what we're going to try to recreate when we make the bedding area, or just try to make that bedding area they're in a little better. And for something like what you just mentioned there, I would just want to try to go in there and create some sort of horizontal cover, so that way those deer aren't able to see you when you're walking down that road, or at least limit how easily they can see you, so you might be able to sneak by them. And that's where, like in a situation like that, if I know that's where I want my bedding, I'll go in there in the off season in the wintertime, and this might be a 2-person job, but you go in there, you find the actual deer beds, get in those deer beds, and then have somebody walk down the road and say, well, if I drop that tree, that one, and that one, I probably can't see him walking down the road as easily as I can right now. And then that kind of limits how much, and then that horizontal cover will also make them feel more secure while they're in that bedding area.
Yep. I'll be coming back to this. I wanted to listen, because I was like, okay, I want to take notes and everything, but I'll listen to this episode again, and then I'll be writing a million notes to take, and then I'll be like, go up to my dad and my mom, like, okay, this is what we're doing, and then they'll be like, okay, have fun.
So for the horizontal cover, would that be like hinge cutting, that kind of stuff? Is that what you're referring to for horizontal cover?
Yeah, so that's a method, and without getting too much into the weeds, it's basically hinge cutting is just one method to how you can create horizontal cover, just like felling a tree and just getting it cut right down to the ground. Where you hinge cut matters just as much as the hinge cut itself, in my opinion. Like, I don't ever want to hinge cut too close to a place that I would be using for access. Like, I wouldn't want to put a hinge cut right on the side of that road, because if you have a successful hinge cut and you fall that tree over, you also have food at eye level. So if now you're creating a place for a deer to feed right by where you're walking, you're increasing the likelihood that that deer will be feeding right next to where you're walking in. So if you are going to do a hinge in right next to where I am using for access, then I'm going to go in there and hit it with a little spray and then kill that tree off, so that way that there's not any food on that tree and it's just the cover of the actual wood.
Okay, so you kind of want to go in, so instead of going around the road, you want to go in a little bit from that, like maybe 5 yards or something, like 5-10 yards in, and make that hinge depending where the beds are.
It's gonna vary depending on where you're at in the terrain, where your access is. There's so many different variables. Like, it's never that one size fits all answer. It's just like you gotta just fit that puzzle, and you might mess it up in the first year, but if you do, I don't look at mistakes as failures. I just look at them like it's a lesson. Like, if I cut something and then there's a deer feeding on it and he bumps me on my way in, it's like, I know I'm not going to do that again. And then it's just, you just make that little micro adjustment the next time.
Yeah. But everyone who listens wants that direct answer, right?
They want that, I wish they existed. It would make this whole thing a lot easier.
Because that's why everyone listens to podcasts now, to learn how to get on big buck. And if you name any podcast, get on a big buck by doing this, or like how to put down a big buck. It's like everyone's going to listen. You're going to get millions of listens on that because it's like, I want to learn this. But like in reality, it's just learning from your mistakes. Like you just said, like, I mean, we never hinge cut. I was going to up at the lease I had at one point, but I lost that after 1 year. That was one of those, one of the properties where like I found like a good point where there's lots of sun coming down, and I threw a food plot mix, throw and grow stuff out. And I was so happy when I saw like little clovers coming up.
So when it comes to, obviously like there's 3 main things that everyone talks about when it comes to keeping deer on your property. It's shelter, food, and water. They're like the big. They're like the big 3. I was like scrolling through your Instagram page and like water. I was interested in the water one because like, okay, we have a creek way down in the valley, right? But we don't have any water like on the property. And I was like, I want to. It's hard to dig a hole because everything's flagstone up there. That's the whole mountain is just one big old flagstone with a little layer of dirt on top. That's basically how I describe it. But I was like, okay, I want to put water here, but it's like, I don't want I was obviously always worried about the stagnant water when you got mosquitoes and everything because I'm in the middle of the woods, but then it's like, where would you put the water in relation to the bedding and the food and putting, like, because they have, I mean, I'm sure that they have certain, like, you go to the food, but they don't want to walk over here to get water. They want it en route to the food, or do they want it in a different location? That's the biggest thing that I have right now is like, I want to put water on the property, but where is the biggest question?
Yeah. And I think one of the most consistent places you can add water on a property without really taking that deep dive into where that location is going to be is along anything like I call them a travel corridor, anything that's taking a deer from point A to point B, like you said. If I can put that en route from the bedding area to that food plot and find out like maybe where is my best stand location in between those two, and if I can add in a water hole into that location, that's going to be a very high odds place where that deer are naturally going to want to go from point A to point B anyway. So now you're just kind of influencing them to come into my position A for my tree stand. Same thing if I have a travel corridor just running on the downwind side. Obviously the wind changes, but if I have a bedding area and a food plot to the north and I have a travel corridor on the southern edge of that I'm going to hunt on north winds, I'll put a water hole location on something like that as well, because I know that bucks are scent checking those places towards the end of October. But I also know they're on their feet a lot. So if a buck's on his feet a lot, he's going to be thirsty. So if he knows that and he's logging that information at times like this into the summer when it's hot, he might not be at that water hole all of the time, but that's a mental note for him. Like, there's water here, there's does that hang out up there. So then when it comes time for him to look for does at pre-rut time, he knows all of those dots connect right there. So he's going to come back and he's going to want to visit that spot.
That would honestly be right near that bedding area. I think would be good because you're trying to put a food plot right there in that pipeline. If you put like some kind of water source between that food plot there and that bedding, and then you have the food plot up on top too, where all the doe go, it wouldn't be a bad location for it. And I mean, you already had that really good encounter with that really big buck this past year near that
power line there, just walking right through.
Yeah.
And I know they start down and they just work their way up at a 45-degree angle. It's where they all come from there. Every animal really just comes up through there.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a pretty good narrowed down area, and that's one way that I call it just stacking my odds. Like if I already have the independent variables of the food plot and the bedding, like you said, up higher, and I know that they naturally want to walk this certain terrain line on their way up. Well, if I can give them a water hole and if I can give them a mock scrape location, those are just 2 more things that put them in front of this tree on these conditions. And those are the days that I'm doing whatever I can to be in that tree.
I think you have a perfect setup right now. I think it's just a matter of just digging the hole.
Just digging.
Yep. That's the hardest part.
That is the hardest part right now, is digging the hole, because I'm going through mostly rock at this point. Yep. But I don't need it doesn't need to be 5 feet deep or anything. You just need a foot or two, and just enough that it doesn't completely dry out if it gets hot.
I would look into getting there. You can get different size tubs, but digging it out and placing a tub down in there, that'll help too when it dries out. It holds water a little bit better with those tubs. But if you go back on my Instagram, there's a couple pictures and videos of stuff with some water hole projects I did with some guys this spring, just to kind of get an idea what it looks like.
So let me ask you this. So like, I know there's from I do a lot of reading about whitetails and stuff like that. I the one thing I've read is like they like to go to water first. Like after they wake up, after they get up, they like to go to water first, and then they go to food. So being said, do you try and find necessarily that water hole first that you want to put in, like this, or find bedding and then find that water hole that you want to put in, then put the food plot in, or like does it really matter?
It's definitely not the same every time.
Right.
And it's like when I go out and I scout a property, I have sometimes hundreds of waypoints on my Onyx, and I look at it like, wait, what did I just do when I was out there? I just got to like dissect everything. But then when I can organize the madness, it just kind of all flows together. And I don't know, it's weird. It's like when I'm actually drawing the design, it's just, it makes me feel like it's an art form of kind of how things flow together. It would be very hard for me to have somebody standing over my shoulder and explaining why I'm doing it while I'm drawing it. But when it's all done, I can explain why it all makes sense. So it's a very random process, but always, anytime I'm doing any kind of habitat improvement, like there's a reason behind it. I'm not drawing up a bedding area or putting in a water hole or anything like that just for the sake of adding something else to the plan. There will be a reason behind why it's there.
Makes sense. So when you're in there scouting this property, are you looking for that bedding first? Is that what you're looking for?
Typically, like how my process starts is I'm just going to do an e-scouting session first, where I'm just looking at the map and I'm just dropping waypoints on anything that looks interesting to me, whether it's, in the hills, if there's certain terrain features that stand out and say, I want to go and check this out, this looks unique, or if there's a place that I think might be bedding, or a place I think we can put in a food plot, I'll put all of those marks down, and then I will kind of organize a route from that of how can I make this make sense, breaking it down, and just kind of weave my way through the property. And just like keeping mental notes log the whole time while I'm doing it, of just remembering like, okay, when I was in this type of habitat on the south slope, like there's bedding here. So I'm going to go, and as I'm walking through, just keep that in my mind and see if it's like that all over. That was just a unique thing, but it's not really like go from bed to where can I put the food and everything. It's just trying to find that flow as you're walking through the property.
All right. Yeah. I mean, at least don't delete your waypoints, because I literally just did that. I literally just like, dude, I don't know.
You talk about a panic attack.
I still like all my waypoints are gone. Like, put it that way. Like, I found like where my trail cameras are at. Now I messaged on X and was like, hey, can I accidentally delete these? Can I have them back? And all. They said they gave me all my deleted ones back, but they gave me all the deleted like trails that I had, but not my waypoints. So I'm like, that doesn't really. I'd rather have the no trails.
Yeah, right.
Have all your waypoints back.
Yeah. So I mean, I was doing it because our deer camp. I was like, I wanted to clear out some space, because at my old cabin, like it was like a freaking rainbow back the valley, like finding all these scrapes and just putting down sign. Like I put stuff down, but no notes on anything, or like. I just put like an X with no notes, nothing. And it's like, okay, why did I put this here? So I was going through to like deleting those. And then like, I just pressed like delete when I was like, I wanted to only see the ones that were on my screen, but I guess I deleted the ones that were off my screen too. And
oh man.
Yeah. So that was,
that's tough.
Yeah. That was a tough day.
Yeah,
I felt like all my work was gone.
So what I'm gonna say what do you value? I'm gonna say value. Like when it comes to a food source, what's one thing that you value the most? Or because you have food plots, you have fruit or nut bearing trees, maybe fruit bearing bushes, browse in general. Like what is that one thing that you're just like, I put this on top of anything? If you only could pick one thing, like this is what you want.
I would personally choose a very good browsing source, or a multitude of them, not necessarily one over the other, but anytime you reach that mature stage of timber and there's not any understory growth, there's no sunlight getting down to the forest floor and promoting that growth, then you're really limiting the amount of food on a property. And the less food you have, the less time the deer are going to spend on your property. So, food plots are great and they're definitely going to pull deer in, but it's the matter of, is the deer going to get to your food plot at nighttime and maybe only show up a couple days a week, or are they going to be showing up there every single day because they have unlimited browse all over the place from all of the new flourishing understory growth that you have throughout the rest of your property? I remember when I took one of the courses from the National Deer Association, one of the videos that they had on there showed a visual representation of just how much a deer browses in a day. And it's like your regular household storage tote. That thing was like 80% full, and he dumped it out on the table. And like when I actually saw that visually, like it just absolutely blew my mind of that's one deer eating that much browse in one single day.
Jeez.
And that makes up a majority of their diet. So it's like, when I saw that, it's like, okay, yeah, if I don't have that, I'm not going to have the deer here. And you can see that for someone like me that spends so much time walking properties, if people don't have browse, I can tell almost like right from when I get there and I'm walking around any kind of open field edge, because you can look in the timber and you'll see like, chest high up to shoulder high. Anything below that is just stripped right down, and there's nothing, because the deer have eaten it clean. Where this new forest that you are doing constant foresting improvement, and you're opening up the canopy and you're promoting that understory growth, like that's what's going to hold the deer on your property. So and I think a part of that is why I value that so much is just from all of the time I've spent hunting public land. Like I have my best hunting on public land when I can nail down those browse sources. Where are they going on their way to the private ag field, or where are they going on their way to that oak flat they're going to hit at night? Because you can't control so many variables on public. So it's like I relied on that browse to have success when I was focusing heavily on hunting public land, and I've carried that over into how I design properties on the private side of things.
It makes so much sense. Deer food plots are like dessert for them. I mean, basically, it's my daughter right now. It's literally my daughter. Like the food plots are her desserts, and that's all she wants to eat right now. Like when you're a young fawn, that's what you're going to go to. When you're a young deer, that's what you're going to go to. It's sweet, it's tasty, But when you're a smart old fart deer, like you like you like to browse on the browse as you go out. Then you top it off with some white oaks or some sweet corn or some clover, some brassica,
whatever it may be. And they just want to, especially the older deer gets, especially when we're talking about older mature bucks, like they don't like spending daylight hours outside of security cover. Very, very rarely are you going to tag a mature buck in a low stem count area. Like it's going to happen where there's a higher stem count if you want to do it consistently. And one of the best ways to do that from a private land perspective is being comfortable doing those forest stand projects and opening up the canopy and making sure that you're getting that promotion of understory growth. That can look very different from one property to the next, and it's an intimidating practice because when you cut a tree, like it's game over. But there's so many good resources out there. There's a lot of different foresters, whether it be from the state or a private forester, that are more than willing to give you that information to help you out. And even myself, like I have an app on my phone that I go out and I'll still scan trees and I'll still scan different little shrubs and stuff if I don't quite know what it is. So that way, it's always good to double check before you cut something.
Yeah.
And it can be intimidating, but it's one of the best things that you can do.
Yeah. I mean, so we bought a house, me and my wife bought a house 3 years ago. There was no mature trees. So like, obviously the guy cut like 3 mature trees down in our yard because he wanted to build a pole barn out back. He sells the house. Now I'm planting small trees to try and grow. And so, you do make mistakes for someone who bought a house with no shade now. Kind of sucks.
Yeah, what's the old saying is the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The next best time is today.
Oh, if I could go back in time and plant a tree here, I would.
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Well, that's why, hey, today, next best time.
Well, there's already some planted.
Yeah, there you go.
So, so you do all this stuff for other people, man, but like, how did your season go this year, Greg?
Oh man, honestly, this was a very unique year for me. This was my biggest year business wise. And as we were entering into the fall, I saw an opportunity to take my business to the next level. And I had a lot of long talks with my wife. I thought about it a lot amongst myself, and I just kind of realized, like, man, I can make a sacrifice for this hunting season, and it might take 5, 6, 7 years, but eventually I'm going to get to a point where I'm going to be able to hunt any day that I want to. So I think I hunted like 9 days, 10 days, maybe all of 2023.
Yeah.
And that included Ohio and then my family deer camp in Michigan. So I didn't get much tree stand time in. Unfortunately, I didn't have success. I was close though. I've been chasing a buck here in Ohio for a few years now, and out of the couple days I was out there hunting him, unfortunately off of trail cam picks, I was one day off both times in each direction. So, and he's a slammer, but I have pick confirmation of him on December 28th, so my hopes are high, and I'm getting ready to make another trail cam run, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, no tag filling for me, but it was all right. Like, I know it was something that needed to be done, like I said, for the long-term success of not only my business, but just like be able to spend a lot more time hunting in the future.
Yeah, that's a big sacrifice to be able to make, to come to that, like, because we all have this passion, like deep passion for hunting, and we want to be out there like every day during the season. It's like you want to be out there no matter how hot it is, how wet it is, how terrible the wind is, anything, how cold it is. Like, you want to be out there because it's I think it's some country singer, but it could be your last buck, like you never know when it's your last buck. I think it's Hardy, actually. I don't know. Might be Hardy or Morgan Wallen. They sound the same. But like that's a huge sacrifice, like to be able to do that. Like that props to you for that. I mean, also Thanks. To do 9-10 days out in the woods, like in retrospect to some hunters, I mean, that before starting the podcast, I was only going out 3 Saturdays a year, or like 3 Saturdays during rifle. So like 3 Saturdays PA and then 1 Monday for rifle. And that's really what it was doing for. Yeah. So I mean, if you're that was still a little bit more than I would say the average guy, if there's even an average hunter anymore in today's realm. I think everyone has at least 10 sits. 10 to like 30 sits is like the average probably. But like probably at least you got to experience like Michigan deer camp still, like to go do that. That's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've had a deer camp. It's up in the Upper Peninsula. That's been around. My dad and grandpa bought that in the early 90s, so like that's been around forever. Yeah. And it's not like it's great deer hunting or anything. There's not a lot of deer up there, but it's definitely not something I ever miss. I'm definitely going up there for the firearm season and stomping around the big woods and seeing what I can come across. But yeah, just to like put it in comparison, 2022, I think my final tally was like 62 days of tree stand time. Wow. And then knocking that down to 9 or 10 in 2023. It was quite the decrease. And I was sitting at my desk and stuff working all fall and just itching, I was like, man, I gotta be out there. I know what's going on. Like, I know he's around, and it's just like their thoughts crawling in the back of my mind, but I'm like, just let it go, man. There's going to be another buck. I promise. There's always going to be that buck. It's just not going to look like that one. So
I would have had like cabin fever though. If I would have set one from 60 to 9, I would have been just like itching at the skin. Let me out.
Yeah, it was tough, man. I'm not going to lie. It was hard.
So I think, that's something that people don't they think of you as like going out in the field all the time. You get to hunt all the time. Like that's a good perspective for people to see. Like, you made the decision to only go out 9-10 days last year. So like, what does your day-to-day look like? Like going through that process of not going out during the season, what does your day-to-day look like as a whitetail management, for property?
Yeah, so what I do a lot in the fall is more virtual based because as you can imagine, there's not a ton of landowners that want you stomping through their property the last week of October, first week of November, and walking through all of the rut funnels and bedding areas, believe it or not. So a lot of it is virtual based, but I try to create content to help people. Like that's my main goal with the content I create. And what I found is that content has opened up a door to also create virtual services on top of what I do in person. So during that fall period, a lot of what I was doing was either immediately helping people with that virtual online stuff or preparing all of my work for the bulk of like my designing season, which starts in December. So that I think I did my first property design on like December 15th of 2023. So that was like when I first got started, and everything leading up to that was just an accumulation of creating content, contacting leads, working with people online, and it was really just like there's always a full set of projects on the to-do list, whether it be one of those different angles. It was just like I always felt like there's something I could be doing to do more. But it led to results because I enjoyed a full schedule all of consulting season and right into land management work this spring and summer. So it's like knowing the work paid off. That's really all I needed to see was that confirmation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's huge. You have that constant flow of business then after that. It's like, okay, I have constant stuff to do, constantly having, people on the schedule, on the docket. So like, how many phone calls do you make in a day?
It depends on the time of year. There's times that I was talking to 5 or 6 different people in a day. But it's pretty consistent. Like I'm typically at least having some point of contact with at least 1 or 2 people every day from pretty much opening day of season all the way up until I start working on properties. But it's not always just like a phone call, especially now. It's like people DM me, we text, I do like Google Meets, things like this. And it's a little bit of everything, but it's one of those sacrifices my wife has to make is, whenever somebody's contacting me on the phone, we're talking about deer hunting. I talk about deer with a lot of different people.
Man, I gotta look into this. I gotta try and get a job like this.
Yeah, you would love
awesome,
it. Man. You would absolutely love it. I don't think your wife would love it.
No, my wife would hate it.
She would become a traveling nurse just to get away from the deer.
Yeah, just to get away from me.
Yeah.
No
but
doubt.
I can imagine you get a lot of the conversations during hunting season is like people will be sitting in their stands, and you had this area set up and the deer goes a certain way that they didn't expect. They're probably messages like, dude, this buck went this way. He didn't go this way. We got to change something. Like, is it a lot of like, oh, can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? Like in the middle of hunting season coming next year.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's something I absolutely love, honestly, is like the guys that I worked with, because that tells me that not only did they buy into the plan and then actually implemented some of the projects that we talked about doing, but they're actively out there trying to hunt, because like that's a whole nother element to the plan and the work, and something I make sure to have these guys understand when I deliver is like, we create this plan and we want the deer to use it like they say like it says that they will in the drawing, but it's not always going to work like that. Deer are going to react however they want to react because they're wild animals. And when somebody sends me a message like that and we have to problem solve and figure it out, like, I really do love that. And that is something that happens because of the fact that deer are wild animals. And just because you tune your property up to a T doesn't mean they're always going to run it like you think they're going to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I've always preached is like, you could do all this scouting, you can figure out where he's at, you can do all this stuff, make your property perfect, and he'll go right instead of left.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's like,
Yep. I've had it happen time and time again. Actually, a couple years ago when I was filming one of my hunts, and I had a buck come down this ridge just from the complete ass backward side of where I thought that they should have came, and they've been coming and they always come. And I didn't even remember saying it consciously until I watched the video after the hunt, and I said in the video, like, why are you coming from there? Where'd you come from? Or something like that. Yeah. And it's just like, they can always just blow your mind. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but that's why we love them. That's why we love chasing after them. Because it's like, why would they be doing this? Why are they in this area? Like,
keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
Like even the buck that I had encountered with this year, like, I didn't expect him to turn at a 45-degree angle and walk directly at me. I thought he was going to keep following the trail down through, and I would have had a shot or at least stopped. Like every deer that I ever had on camera, even some of the buck, they always stopped and like maybe checked around, maybe looked down the power line. No, he kept coming and decided to walk right at me. Gave me zero shot. I had no chance in hell to get in this buck, and I was so mad.
I think there's an answer to that, right, Greg? There's an answer to Ethan's problem. You got to have a spear in your stand with you. Yes. So like when he does that, you just drop down and just spear him.
It's always your backup.
Yeah. I could have jumped out and jumped on him. I really could have.
Could have run him like a horse.
Take the harness. Yeah, take the harness off real quick. Come. That would have been if I would have been filming that. You can imagine the views on that thing.
Or the news. For that one, the news, because like they're like Hunter dies because he's speared by buck's antler.
Yep. Yeah, that would be that'd be a good way to go out.
Yeah. So Greg, what's your big, like, how would someone get in this line of work? This is for me personally.
Yeah, man, honestly, like for somebody like myself, I didn't go to school and get a degree that was specific around like forestry or wildlife biology or anything like that. Do I think things like that are going to be helpful? Absolutely. But the beauty of the age that we live in is that there's also free content that is out there everywhere if you're willing to spend the time to consume it. I was blessed, like I mentioned at the very beginning here, I got in to the industry very early, and I started helping a guy, and that just kind of like got my mind going at a young age of, okay, this guy, obviously I wasn't making a lot when I was 16 years old and planting food plots, but he's paying somebody to do this work, and there's a lot of people out there that own this much property. So it's really just all about like starting any other business, whether it's you want to design and improve hunting properties or you want to start a trash pickup service. Like you just have to have the vision. You have to know what problem you're solving, and you just have to be willing to kind of go through the sucky parts of it until you get that opportunity, which that was kind of myself until I got to work with Whitetail Partners here, being able to connect with the team and work with a group of guys who we all kind of have our own region. Like I was presented the opportunity and just kind of went all in on it. So I think that just having that knowledge of deer, always being willing to keep learning, and then just putting yourself out there and starting to work for guys. It's just, you do good work for people and they're going to tell their friends about it. And usually people that own hunting properties have friends that own hunting properties. And it's all about doing that good work and just staying consistent with it.
Yeah. Hard work pays off in both aspects, in every aspect of life. With the scouting public, with making your own property, with making your own business and doing it that way, building a business up, and only hunting 9 days in 2023. Like that's, I couldn't even imagine. I told my wife the other night, I was like, I want to sit less in the woods, but I don't want her to think that I'm going to sit like 9 sits. I don't.
Yeah, it's going to be like 20 instead of 40.
It's going to be like 15 with production.
Yeah.
Less sits, but more productive.
I bought my wife a bow last summer, and I got her out. And she, out of the days I hunted, she came with me about half of them. And she's pretty cool. You know, she likes to hang her own stand and hunt her own setups. And she was out there scouting with me, finding her own spot and stuff. Yeah. And so I got pretty lucky in that aspect that when I do go hunt, I know that she'll be more than happy to come right along with me.
Yeah, that's the dream. Man, you are living the absolute dream. Let me tell you what. You have a camper right now. You drive a camper with pulling a car behind it. You get to travel all over.
That's great. Well, once I don't know if I will or not this year. I guess I'll find out here in a couple days. I did try to pull my Iowa tag this year, and if that does happen, the plan is to pull the rig to Iowa and hunt out of it. But if not this year, it'll be next year. So one or the other. I'm looking forward to being able to talk about the definition of a mobile hunter. I guess when you take your house on the road, that's probably the best mobile hunting that you can get right there.
It is.
True definition there.
Now you gotta get one of those meat pole things from the back that goes in the hitch. So you have to put that up like the sell at the Great American Outdoor Show where they put it right in. I've been wanting to get it for my truck. For
I wanted to get one too. Just so nice.
Yeah, you just put a ball in there, you just pull it down, and whole deer gets skunned right there. Back of your truck, you just throw it in the back of your truck, and you're done. I mean, that's
throw a whole deer in the back of the Subaru.
Well,
like I did.
Just put on. Yeah. Well, yeah.
I threw that. I shot a doe. Was it 2 years ago now? Yes. 2 years. I shot a doe, and I have an Outback. I don't really didn't have anything else to put it, so I just put a couple trash bags down in the back, and I just threw the whole, I gutted her, but threw the whole deer in the back of the Subaru, and every once in a while I'd look in the back mirror to see this head of a deer in the back. I was like, okay, it's supposed to be there.
Oh my gosh. That's great. Greg, where can people, or what's your one tip to anyone, either that wants to start it or is trying to increase their property or make their property better for whitetails?
Yeah, I think that I would say if I could summarize it, it's that you can make a plan for your property. You can have somebody like me come out and design a plan for your property. You can implement the projects and you can do all of that, but that will all attract deer to your property. But if you want to consistently have success, it's all about how you hunt that plan. You have to hunt your property the right way, understand the strengths, kind of like what we were talking about with that 10-acre piece, and be disciplined enough to only hunt the right spots on the right days. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you have the best property, the best plan in the world. If you lose that aspect of woodsmanship, you're not going to enjoy that continued success. So just keeping the property strengths in mind, having that discipline, that's going to get you where you need to go.
Awesome. Ethan, anything else? You got any other questions?
I'm sure I got a million. We could do, like you said, we could do this for 3 days and just...
Well, he'll be back on for an e-scouting breakdown type thing. So
there we go.
If you think of anything then, just fire away.
Gladly.
But Greg, where can people follow you at, get in contact you, all that kind of good stuff if they want to talk to you or even, bring you out for their property?
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram. That my handle is Greg_Whitetail_partners. You can shoot me a DM on there. Like I mentioned, I post a ton of content just trying to help people out. Feel free to follow along, check that out. Then we also have our website, just whitetailpartners.com. That has links to a bunch of different articles. We have YouTube videos out. We have our own podcast now that's more land management focus, so you can find a bunch on there. We have a plethora of content out there now, and but yeah, if you want to contact me directly, Instagram's typically the best way to do that.
Cool, man. We really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your knowledge and hearing some stories about other properties. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, man.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
I love it.
Absolutely.